Hi, Tara here, and I'm about to introduce you to Matthew Crane. Matthew and I wrote an article together for Rural and Regional Development, the journal, and the title was Defiant Doctorates, Reshaping Social, Cultural and Intellectual Value of the Doctorate in Regional Universities. So I thought Maddie and I would get together and we'd talk about this article, talk about how two people that didn't know each other sort of got to know each other through writing an article, but also the value and the importance of these types of relationships in building a defiant mode of academic writing. Let's talk with Matt now. Uh,
Fab.
so Matt, welcome. I'm so excited about this conversation. As we discussed about 20 seconds ago when we were getting ourselves ready for this conversation, so rarely do we talk about academic writing and how academic writing happens. And I think that puts
Mm,
incredible pressure on students in particular because they think there's all these wizards moving around academic life and sort of publications just appear and we so rarely talk it through. And so today, for the first time in my career, you've encouraged me, you've poked the bear, and we're going to have this conversation. And I'm thrilled that you did poke the bear. And look, I do want to start with how we met. Oh, isn't this fantastic?
mm,
Let's talk about how we met. So we met literally on LinkedIn. And by my memory, as I was going back through my notes, I think I posted an article about the importance of regional universities,
yes.
after the Accord document and so forth. And
Mm,
you somehow read that piece and said, isn't it interesting that, the regional PhD student is completely invisible? And so we had that conversation, and then it sort
mm,
of became this article. But so often on LinkedIn, it's sort of, crappy. I think it's sort of cosplaying middle managerialism, if I will. Sort of people go, I'm
mm,
so excited to announce that, I've opened an envelope. Yes. And
mm.
and that's really sad. And we use the word networking so flippantly and so foolishly often. So can you tell us a little bit about social media, meeting people, LinkedIn, and how this writing came together through social media?
Mm. It's such a, yes, you've hit on a kind of really important thing, I think, because I think the thing I admire, I suppose, about your LinkedIn presence, if I can say that, is you maintain your voice. And I think that's really important. Um, I think with the AI kind of capabilities too within LinkedIn, everything feels so happy and positive and signaling this lovely virtue about how fabulous life is. And, when you've opened the envelope and you've posted about it, you might be sitting there, or someone else might sit there and think, oh, well, I didn't open an envelope today. Is my life, is my career valid? So I think, yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges in social media is maintaining that authentic voice that um, isn't kind of signaling virtue or written by a machine
Yeah.
um, to tell us all the fabulous things that have happened in the day. And I think in terms of your post about the regional university, I think it was the first time I'd been struck by someone, a scholar of your standing, um, actually naming, that the regional university has incredible capacity across a variety of kind of settings to offer something really important to the world and to the community. Um, and I think when I reflect on my own experience, particularly in this time when I think university offers have probably just come out over the last couple of days here in Australia. And with the whole ATAR, something like 30% of year 12 students don't even use an ATAR, but get into university through great schemes that open up the possibility. I was reflecting on my very average VCE results, my philosophy was just get enough to get, just get enough. Um, and I was reflecting that actually I could have gone to the University of Melbourne with the results that I got, but I chose not to.
Yes.
Um, and I think, yeah, there's often been this sense of if you don't go to a group of eight university, you've gone to some lesser establishment.
Yeah.
And I think, but that's not your question about LinkedIn. Um, is
But
it
perhaps
is
it's
it
also about
important?
the isolation of students, that
Mm,
students from those
mm,
regional universities tend to feel invisible, that they are not the main audience for the conversation. That's what I've learnt from you.
mm. Yes, yes, I think that's right. And in trying to capture that visibility, is it about pumping out I went to the opening of a new door and wasn't it wonderful? And I met these people. And, I think it's really, in part, maybe it is about generating that kind of content, but I think it's also about showing up in the space and contributing to the scholarly conversation, um, and demonstrating that the work can be done.
Yeah.
The work can be done. The thinking, the writing, the scholarship.
Yeah,
It's
and
the
it was
bread and butter.
your courage too, because I did a post about, I think it was the post accord, as I said, and I'd written a piece going, these people have done supposedly a template for the future
Mm,
of international higher education in Australia, and they've come from a deficit model of regional universities. So it's basically stopped at the start, and it is rendering one third of Australia's population that live in regional, rural, and remote environments problematic, invisible, and marginalised, and with no concrete, positive, proactive strategies to enable change. And you were straight in. Now again, I'm just a random, but not many PhD students would immediately get into a conversation with a professor about their article, and you were straight there, Maddie.
what do you think that says?
I think it shows you're a courageous, confident, bright man who recognised something he needed to consider further, and had the courage and the grit to ask questions and give good answers back. That's what I think it
Mm.
showed.
And I think, Tara, that's the power of social media
Mhm.
in one sense, because I think it sort of disembodies us in a sense. So there's this kind of um, freedom, perhaps, to enter the dialogue in a way that you mightn't.
Yeah,
Although maybe I would. I mean, and I certainly have face to face. But it's something that, and I suppose that connects to a bit of my kind of background of
yeah,
actually having to really step out and to seize the day, I guess. But I think if you don't have that um, capacity, or you might be an international student who, for whom English is not your first language, and you're negotiating kind of cultural mores and things.
indeed.
So in some ways, social media can be really, particularly LinkedIn, which has that more professional, I suppose, emphasis, can be a bit more, so called, can be a bit more, what am I saying? It can be a bit easier, I think, for people to
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, enter that dialogue.
No, that's brilliant.
Um,
Absolutely brilliant. That's that
mm,
disintermediation of social media. So
mm,
the flattening of the model
yes.
and power structures can be of great use to students if they want to take that opportunity.
Mm.
That's great, mate. Now, where do you want to take us now? We thought we'd alternate between the questions. Where do you want to take us now in our conversation, mate?
Well, I suppose, how did you've obviously developed quite a long career of using social media, YouTube, as an early kind of internet um, I want to say expert aficionado, your work on Google, etc. So
Yeah.
I suppose, have you seen the changes and the perhaps advances, but maybe even the disadvantages in this kind of hyper connected world?
Yeah, look, that's a really strong question. I think the great advantage, and I suppose the other narrative I've got to add to that is I've worked in, what is it, 10 universities in 4 countries and counting,
Mm,
right? I'm currently coming to you from an undisclosed location in Palmerston North in temporary accommodation. So, this is the volatility of academic life that I always try
mm,
and perform. But for me, the great gift of social media through, since really, I mean, blogs started in 1999, so we're really dealing with quite a mature media platform at this point. But the great gift for me, as I have moved around the world, is I have been able to stay in close contact, friendship, relationships with people I care about deeply from
mm,
universities that I was at and then left. And, friends I had, I haven't lived in my hometown, which was Perth, Western Australia. I haven't lived in Perth since about 2004, 2005. So when you've lived the bulk of your adult life away from your home, that does all sorts of things to social relationships. And so, whatever
mm,
I might say in terms of critique, the great gift for me has always been that those very deep and important relationships in my life, my roots, literatively, figuratively, metaphorically, I can on a daily basis stay in communication with my great friends. And you've seen that, you and I are friends. We're also friends on Facebook. And those daily granular iterations, particularly on Facebook for
mm,
me, are very important. I mean, I use each interface differently. I use Threads very differently from how I use Instagram, how I use vlogs, how I use podcasts. So I do a lot of interface management, and mostly I maintain quite professional relationships on almost all of them, except Facebook is my slight aberrance in that narrative. And Matt, this may be useful for you. I've had to tighten up my personal and professional binary oppositions. I used to be a little bit cooler,
mm,
a lot cooler than I am, but since I did the work on Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate in particular, I've had to be a little bit more cautious and careful because, doxing happens and all sorts of quite problematic things occur, and it is quite dangerous for some
mm.
humans in these environments. So, I made a decision to do that quite difficult work. And of course, I've written a book on Donald Trump. So, I won't be going to the United States anytime soon. But
No.
because I made a decision to write on,
Mm,
the three, not the
mm,
Holy Trinity, probably the demonic trilogy of Peterson and Tate and Trump, I've just had to be a little bit more circumspect. And that's why when I had this
mm,
great relationship with you and met you this year, and it was a great and organic and natural relationship, it meant a lot to me because in the last few
mm.
years, I've had to be relatively closed just to protect myself. Protect my
Yes.
wonderful husband Jamie, and protect my
Mm,
family and friends, so they're not getting it. Is that sort of answering things
mm,
a little bit?
I think I think that's such an important message, really, is that on the one hand, we were talking before about the authenticity,
Yeah,
um, and then on the other hand, that other faith of being overly authentic in the online
yeah,
space, of them being vulnerable to
yeah,
all sorts of other things happening. And I think
yeah,
your point about the platforms being for different purposes is really helpful, actually. I think when you sort of get into it,
yeah.
and I think that's one of the problems with LinkedIn, is that it's become people's essay writing space where they reveal all of this kind of inner stuff. And I think, go and buy a journal. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
go and write it down. What's this about? Yeah.
yeah. Have a conversation with oneself. I mean, it's the oversharing
Yes.
component of this, and some platforms
Mm,
are a lot worse than LinkedIn. Can I say Threads? I know more stuff about people's
Mm,
husbands than any human being needs to know. And it's like how you make a decision to do that, I'm really, really uncertain. So I think
mm,
that that's a tip for particularly academics, that it is important we are authentic, but we are authentic scholars too. We exist on the planet as scholars. That's our functionality.
mm,
And
mm,
oversharing about what our husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend did last night. They didn't do the dishes. How very dare they? Oh my goodness me.
mm,
It's like no one cares. And so there's always that
mm,
no one cares first lens, right? And I think that's quite
mm,
important. So it means when we do share something, particularly on LinkedIn, it is a meaningful share. It's not I've just done the dishes.
mm,
So I
mm.
think that's a great question. As you've said,
Yeah.
interface management is probably the crucial
Mm,
skill for PhD students and all of us. But can I go to you now about publishing during a PhD?
mm,
Very tough space that I have so many arguments, internal arguments with myself about publishing during a PhD. And it's such a complicated decision that you took so well, I think, to publish during your PhD on a topic that's not your PhD. So you made a decision that two of us
mm,
would do this meta piece about rural
mm,
and regional development and about the PhD student and the specificity of the PhD student in regional universities. So that's a meta piece for you, not hugely
mm.
connected with your doctorate at all. Did that decision worry you? How did you make that decision?
I didn't overthink it, to
Didn't?
be completely honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because I my primary or principal supervisor and I had a number of conversations about writing a Quinn's qualitative, can't remember what all the letters stand for, but a meta data analysis of qualitative work on my topic, my PhD topic, as a literature review to then publish. And certainly, and I think it goes down the sort of line of self promotion, perhaps, but there is certainly a push from universities about publishing during your PhD, publishing
Yes.
bits and pieces during your PhD. And I made the decision after a long conversation with my principal and co supervisors that I wasn't going to publish because I want to submit on time, if not before.
Yes.
I can't be down a rabbit hole of of preparing things both for the PhD and publishing. So when our kind of dialogue emerged and it took shape, it was really exciting, and it coincided with space in my life where I think I was emailing from the airport, and it was really about finding moments of time to to do the work. So it was writing, in the airport lounge, and then on in my notes on the plane, and which was really good because I was off to do data collection for my PhD, and that was incredibly intense, emotional work, and so it was actually nice to have the space to reflect on the journey that had brought me to the point where I was traveling interstate to interview participants for my doctoral project. Um, so that was exciting. But I suppose too, like when I think about kind of who I am in the scholarly space, I've a bit like you, I've studied lots of different things. And so it's really quite hard to say, I'm a social work academic because I don't feel like a particularly good social worker. Am I a social science academic? Am I actually a historian really? Or is my focus on the lived experience, which can kind of fit into
That's
lots
right.
of kind of academic genres? Um, and so I was just actually reading one of my, I suppose, academic heroes is Catherine Massam, who's a wonderful historian from Perth.
Certainly.
Um, And I was,
I think we overlapped actually at UWA. I think we were at
oh
UW in the
yes,
history department
yes,
at about the same time. Remarkable
yeah,
human being.
yeah.
Remarkable.
Oh, there you go.
Remarkable.
It's incredible to think all these. That's so Aussie, isn't it? To have these interlays of
I know.
connection. But Catherine, so Catherine was my lecturer in history, and was an incredible, um, just an incredible presence in my kind of intellectual life. And at a particular moment in time when life was pretty tense, um, in her very Catherine way, said, because we had this interest in Benedictine spirituality and Benedictine life, and she said, I think a trip to New Norcia for you would be the way to go.
Wow.
And so we constructed a research project so that it kind of had this purpose. And I managed to get money from another organization to pay for flights and things. And off I went on a 2 week research trip, working in the archives and because New Norcia the archives house the oldest photographic collection.
It does.
And so I, have had the privilege of trawling through the archives and compiling different sources. And actually, I was just thinking about that this morning, publishing, doing a PhD. I have a book where I write down all these ideas of things I want to do because I think, oh, maybe I should do another PhD. get into that work on New Norcia's photos. But Catherine's voice is actually in our article. She is the person who said, "Go where the supervision is."
Lovely. Lovely.
Um, and she also, I rang her when I was, tossing up this idea of doing a PhD, and she said, "Matthew, I feel like we've had this conversation for the better part of a decade. Would you just do it?"
That's
And I
amazing.
thought, you know, yeah, get on with it. Mm.
And you've
I don't
got the
know.
right attitude going in for sure. There's no, because you're going to do it quickly. And I think the time people don't use well, mate, is while the thesis is under examination, because you've got a
Mm,
completed thesis. It's very, very well drafted. And at that point, you can send an article, which is a chapter, out
mm,
every couple of days. So you're using that
mm,
time incredibly well. So you've made some great decisions, great decisions. And I did want to talk to you, and we may want to have a further conversation about that. You might want to ask me in a different way, but I'm interested in your reflections on the writing of that article. As we've talked
mm,
about so often, writing, academic writing is a bit of a black box. People don't talk about, there's all these damn writing programs, and you go to a seminar and it's like turbocharge your writing and all this sort of stuff. But we don't actually talk about what it is, the nuts and bolts, how the relationship is formed, how decisions are made all the way through, how it's written, how the drafts are exchanged, going through the refereeing process, going through all those
mm,
different processes at the end. We don't have these overt conversations. What would you tell people about this writing process through this article?
mm. That's so true, isn't it? We don't,
Yeah,
it's like the behind the scenes, when the emperor's got no clothes, how does it actually kind of work? I
yeah.
suppose, and, for a little plug too, I had just finished a series of trips out to Gippsland teaching. Um, and I'd been listening to your book on setting up your life to write a PhD. And so I was, thinking about transitions and language. And,
Yeah.
I had Tara Brabazon's voice in my head about writing and thinking, oh my God, now I'm writing with this person. Oh, am I, have I got the comma in the right spot? Um, and I think there's a scholarly voice, isn't there, really? And it's a particular way of writing. And it's something um, I have a much more narrative way of writing, I suppose. And as my co-supervisor says, oh, it's much more French, you tell a story. Um, and my American primary supervisor is like, get to the point. Like, come on, so it's it's finding that kind of middle ground in writing. Um, and I think it was exciting, it was
Yeah.
exciting to kind of think about the narrative, but then also to tighten it. And I framed it to my bit. And I think like, what we've done is quite unusual in a sense. Like it's not usual to kind of piece together a theoretical grounding with a reflection that's then also tied together with your own reflections about your family and
Yeah.
origin kind of narrative to then be accepted for publication in such a quick and positive way, I
Oh,
think.
I
And
know.
even the reviewing process was um yeah, it was like table tennis. I was thinking, you know, this is interesting. Beware of reviewer two.
Oh, I know. And look,
um
we probably should talk about that. But the article in and of itself is
mm,
very unusually constituted. When you and I had our conversation, I was working on post that article where you and I met. We met through that first article. I was trying to come up with modelling to improve regional education doctorates, to improve doctoral studies in regional locations, using contemporary media, using the best interfaces we have to improve the experience, to create what I often call a parity of care. So I was working on that shaping. But of course, then here's one we prepared earlier, then a remarkable PhD student from a regional location got in touch with me and decided, let's take these models on the road. And so
mm,
it really is a two-hander. I wrote the first half, you wrote the second half. We both drafted and made the article itself's got all sorts of very interesting resonances that develop through the editing and the drafting process.
mm,
So I'm incredibly proud of it. And then, of course, as you said, we had a fantastically odd and glorious refereeing process where two thought this is a strange interest. This is a strange article. This is a strange, interesting article. Let's publish this. And then, of course, we had one colleague who was very confused and wanted a hard experimental science modelling,
mm,
and of course didn't recognise you and I have a history bent, and we're using primary sources. And of course,
mm,
they confused the primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So that was my
mm,
critique back going, thank you very much to the colleague. Just a reminder, we're using primary sources here, and primary sources mean different things in the humanities and theoretical social sciences compared to the sciences, just for noting. And then on and on we went through. But did you find that, I mean, as you said, I mean, every day we'd wake up and there was a new email or new movement.
mm.
It was astonishing.
It was astonishing, but it was also exciting, as one who hadn't been through that process before. It was like, oh, okay, so this is how it looks, and this is the kind of, and I was reading some of the feedback, thinking, I'm not sure I actually really understand what that person means. But anyway, I'm sure Tara will decipher, interpret the feedback, which you did, with lightning speed and impressive acumen. Obviously, not your first rodeo.
No, my first
Um,
rodeo.
and then, of course, that editing period of, was your diagram in the right spot and did the comma go, it was kind of, yes, eye-wateringly, yeah, dull,
Yes.
but obviously adds to the rigor, I guess, of,
Yeah.
this isn't something that's been slapped up in a back room and, thrown on a flea market table. It's been through quite a
Yeah.
rigorous peer review process. Um, so I think that's exciting and, adds to the um, well, to use that kind of hard word of the validity of the work.
Yes.
And I there was a few points where I thought, how's this going to come together? Does this all hang, does this all kind of hang in the right way? Will, how's it gonna kind of get through that process? But it
Yeah.
stood, it held its own. So I think that's positive. That's incredible.
Oh, remarkable. And I was conscious for all our senior colleagues watching this video between us, I was conscious moving through the to and fro. And of course, book publishing particularly has this to and fro. But I was conscious that I had to, be the head of the household to do this one because obviously Matt, this was his first go at the rodeo. But I also
Mm,
you were CC'd all the way through. You were never excluded from the conversations. You were always
mm,
there and present, and the commentary that I would be offering was the commentary that we were offering. But part
mm.
of the reason I did it so overtly was for you, so that you could see it. Because I
Yes,
think very,
yes.
very rarely you see that. And look, it
Mm,
was a wonderful, amazing journal, Rural and Regional Development, which we certainly can recommend, and I would certainly publish with them again. But it was a very interesting, a big international
mm,
editorial board, and all sorts of strange things occurring. And right at the end, changing the referencing style radically to
mm,
what I describe as the phys chem style. So we moved a social a social science article into the phys chem referencing style manually with a couple of days to go, and you were again watching it. That is rare. I've never seen that done before. But again, part of that was you getting the full vista of that process. So I did that overtly. I can tell you that now. But did you
mm.
did you feel that on the way through?
I did pick up on that, and I I was quite grateful, really, to you for that. But that sense, I suppose, of upholding the kind of collegiality and the integrity of that, rather than a kind of um, hierarchical, like you were very generous in avoiding that kind of hierarchical.
Yeah.
I'm the professor.
No,
um,
no, no.
Kind of vibe. Which so I guess what was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean,
You made that deliberate decision. What was that? Yeah.
yeah,
How
no, I,
did you
I did,
find
and
it?
I did that overtly because when you do write with a student, and I have written, I think I'm now at what about 630 research outputs. I'm that old, mate, and remember, mostly about 80% I am a single author, so I singly write
Mm,
books and articles and so forth. But of the remaining section of co-authorship, there is a very special little slice where I have written with students, my students and other students, often talking about doctoral education to broaden out the sociological parameters so people can actually eyeball what the diversity of the doctorate looks like. So we have this notion of everyone being a 22 or a 23-year-old guy or gal or non-binary identifying person.
mm,
And actually, I've
mm,
focused very strongly, particularly in the last little bit, writing with colleagues, students who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and of course, 80s. And
mm.
that's just a reminder to people that that's the diversity of the doctorate team. That's what it's about.
Yes,
And
yes,
and so
absolutely.
I certainly was aware it was important. I wanted you to have a really good view of what was going on without the stress. So I wanted you to know I've got
Mm,
this. You're cool, mate. I've got this. We'll handle the daily stuff that's going on. And I was, intentionally used, as you saw, and I always do this, a very respectful tone. I
mm,
never do a grumble bum at reviewer two,
mm,
not at all. So some scientist has gone, oh, why were you using primary sources? And being respectful, they're going, thank you to that colleague. That perspective comes from this particular discipline. This paper comes from this particular discipline. So keep it all very uh, intellectually generous. I write about that a lot, but it is important
yes,
that we perform it.
yes.
And I hope I
Mm,
perform it. And so it was about you seeing it, being
mm,
involved, but not managing the daily stress of, there's another email from these people. Oh no, what happens next? So by the time you woke up, because I'm a little bit further in the antiquity,
yes.
by the time you woke
Mm,
up, you got to see the initial resolution of it, and then you and I emailed and made sure we were both cool,
mm,
and then
mm,
on the process went. So I did it intentionally to model that, but also I wanted to get this through for you too, and I wanted to get this
mm,
through for you
mm,
quickly. And you've got to therefore address any concerns robustly and quickly, so that it gets through. Because if you don't address them, the piece won't get through. So that's what I wanted for you.
yes, and I think that was clear, and yes, you do talk about that intellectual and scholarly generosity, and and it is important, I think, that um, people who do have the runs on the board um, are 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 not just mentoring, but are enabling opportunities for the next generation of academics. And I think that's, to go back to publishing outside your area during a PhD. I think with the proliferation of teaching only and teaching focused jobs in the academic um, world, where you're given a small percentage of time to contribute to teaching and learning publications. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, if that's the only job I can get for the next however many years before I can build, and this is not something I would ever say, I think, being a good union person, workloads and all of that, I think are
Yeah, yeah.
so problematic and important. Um, but I'm thinking, well, how am I going to spend the early hours of the morning doing my own writing to be thinking about,
Yes.
because I'm not a strategic person, but obviously one needs to be, um, thinking about promotion and, if
Yeah.
I get in on a teaching only contract, how do I get, the research time? And so partly I was kind of thinking, well, HDR, the higher degree space, is a good place to kind of do some thinking and some writing. And so, maybe that's another kind of string to one's bow around, particularly in that kind of scholarship of teaching and learning space.
Yes.
How do I develop a portfolio of things
Yeah.
that are rigorous and hold up, but can also enable the other writing that, how can those things
Yeah.
kind of come
Yeah.
together to look like a promotion?
Yeah.
I'm talking
It,
about kind of academic promotion, like,
yes.
yeah. So it was kind of, in as much as I'm ever strategic, it was thinking, well, actually, this is a fabulous opportunity, and let's do this because this could be a future space of, and within that, within the university, I've just very kind of quietly started a bit of a community of practice of PhD students who are in social sciences, social work mainly, who are doing using similar methodologies and who are interviewing people. Um, so I actually quite enjoy the relationality that comes from that, and so maybe there's another paper to be written down the track on reflecting on that
Oh, look.
relationality in the PhD. But I think
Yeah.
it's incredibly important, and I think yeah, and finding those opportunities to, I suppose, in the way that our paper shaped up, within that kind of scientific kind of
Yeah.
entering in, a social science paper entering a kind of scientific space. Um, maybe there's more room for people to be thinking in a scholarly way. So it's that action reflection kind of dialogue that can find space in publications.
Oh,
Does that
look, I
make
agree.
sense, or am I
Oh, look,
rabbiting
mate,
on?
mate, it does. And you are being incredibly strategic and shrewd. And the only advice I always give people, and I've taught, I think I'm at 158 PhD supervisory completion. So, this is a lot of people. And so many of my wonderful colleagues that I managed to get through to completion are in teaching only or teaching focused jobs. And
mm,
of course, they're in a
mm,
job in difficult times, and I'm so grateful they're in
mm,
work. But what I've always said to them is keep writing. I know you're not
mm,
getting research time, but that does not help
mm,
your career. You need to keep writing. And so what I always say,
mm,
Maddie, is
mm,
keep the placeholders going. So if it is about writing Sottle and Sauce, please, every single year, never be that academic, and there are millions of them. Never be those academics where you look at their Google Scholar, or their Google Scholar is not public, and there's 10 years where they
mm,
haven't written
mm,
anything. I mean, that is absolutely appalling. Whatever is happening to you, keep a piece coming out, at least
mm,
one every year. Because remember, research
mm,
activity is defined as 5 articles in 5 years. So
mm. And
that's that's
it's
that's the
probably,
benchmark.
and it's probably another conversation for another day, but it does, I think, fall within what can become a potentially abusive kind of vocational trope, and that's a whole other
Mm,
conversation. And so I think one of the difficulties is when you find pleasure in writing and reading and research, it's hard not to want to do it.
that's right. That's right.
And and the flip side of that is it can become abusive when it's linked to workloads. Well, it's not so much it can become abusive, it is abusive when
It
it's
is.
so linked to workloads
Yes.
and promotion, and yet it's not recognized
No.
sufficiently in time or remuneration.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's such
So
a double-edged sword,
look, it
I
is.
think.
And my focus is always on the individual academic that I'm caring for,
Mm,
including you. And I know there's a lot of focus on one particular institution, one particular set of policies about promotion, but the one thing I know is that the university you're at now is not the university you'll be at in 10 years or five
mm,
or perhaps two. So because of that, you've got to have this much more expansive, propulsive sense of who you are. And you've often heard me say you are the star of your own life. So
mm,
the
mm,
policies are working against you. There's a lack of infrastructural support. I get all of that, but you are the star of your own life, and have
mm, mm,
particular foundational mantras for yourself. This is a limit below which I will not go. So every year of
mm,
my life
mm,
from this point on, there will be at least one article, no matter what else is occurring, because that's
mm.
protecting you. That's speaking to your future, and we don't know what that future is going to be.
Mm, mm. And I think that's so important. And it reminds me of two um, significant conversations I've had recently. One was about how to have the career, and it was very much focused on empirical studies in Q1 journals and funding, getting on
Yeah.
funding, which I get. Actually, that conversation sat with me for quite a while because it sort of disrupted my value set in a way, because I thought, I get it. I understand that metric and the motivation, um, juxtaposed with an incredible associate professor in criminology who, there was a recent um, amendment to legislation before Parliament, and one of the members of Parliament asked this academic to craft some words that fitted into that, and it's an incredibly significant contribution and connection between the interface between public and kind of the closed door academy.
Yeah.
It's this middle ground, um, that bears no research metric,
No.
right?
Well,
It bears
how does
it
it fit
bears
in
no
impact?
exactly
You often
what
hear
is
me
the
say,
impact.
I love our colleagues in law, socio-legal studies, and in criminology. I love them. A lot of my mates are, of course, ultra realist criminologists, because they're really honest with us all. They show the national value of the work that they are doing every single day. And we talk about
Mm,
real life
mm,
engagement, real life impact. And if our metrics are not capturing that,
mm.
that's the fault of the metrics, not the
Yes.
academics that are
Yeah, yeah,
enabling the words
exactly.
of legislation, where probably
Mm,
there's no
mm,
academic work that's more important than that.
mm. Well, and my comment to this person, such as my comment is, you know, who am I actually? But my comment was, this is so impactful.
Yeah,
Like your words are being spoken in Parliament. This is incredibly impactful.
yeah,
Um, we often hear politicians say the research says, well, let's verify that, please. Um, and this person's response was, I always say to early career researchers and to my PhD students, write and research the things that you're passionate about and that
yeah,
interest you.
yeah,
This associate professor said, Marg Camilleri, beautiful human being at Federation, she said, the metrics, they're one kind of thing, but you've got to follow your passions and your interests. And I think that's so important. And I guess that's partly why it was so exciting, um, to me to be invited by you to kind of co-write this piece. Was I feel very, um, passionate and privileged to have found myself where I am, um, in a system that really wasn't kind of geared towards someone with my background. Um, so on the one hand, yeah, metrics are important, but on the other hand, I kind of think, stuff it.
yeah. But can I say
I'm
we
going to
should
write what I want to
probably,
write. Yeah.
yeah, we should probably report our own metrics, shouldn't we? That the piece came out uh, just 2 weeks ago, I think, to today.
Mm,
And it's already in not only the top 10, I think it's now number 9 for both reading and downloads in the history of the journal. And of course, the journal's been in existence about 6, 7 years. And so our article's only been out for 2 weeks and it's already in the top 10 of read and downloaded journals.
wow.
So that's a
Yeah,
very
wow.
interesting metric as well. So it does
Mm,
follow the advice your wonderful colleague gave you, which
mm,
is, have the area of passion, have the values, have the integrity, have the authenticity, to go back to the start of our conversation, and then
mm.
from that value set, write with meaning, with mattering, with purpose, and probably it'll be okay.
Mm,
Last question from me, and we've talked about already all sorts of international people are reading this piece, and I'm getting some lovely reviews from people, and it's terrific and exciting. I'm sure people are responding to you as
mm,
well. Who do you hope will read the piece, and what impact do you hope it will have?
mm. Yes, such a good question. And can I say that I think it's open access, publishing is so important, because as I was thinking just now about how to respond, I was thinking, oh, I hope someone reads it, and then who doesn't even know that they might want to do a PhD, but then how are they going to access it? And then I thought, well, open access. It's so incredible that people can read the work with the click of a
For
link.
free.
It's wonderful, for free. Yeah, yeah. And so I really hope. I mean, the word defiant is such an exciting kind of word to have in a title of a doctorate. So I hope that someone reads it who wants to defy a system and find their own voice, and, well, place and voice in that. Um, yeah, and who, yeah, at any stage of life, really. Um, I think education shouldn't be ever taken for granted, but should be relished at any point. And that's certainly been, key for me, really. What about you? Who do you
Oh,
kind
look,
of?
I'm so inspired by that. You're getting me going again, as you always do. Look, Matthew, I hope
Mm,
that too. I mean, I only now publish in platinum open access journals, and I try and go as international as possible. So I try and
mm,
not limit publishing at all to Europe and North America. It is a big
mm,
world out
mm,
there, and if whatever time I've got left walking the planet, I hope I am supporting colleagues through the multiple African nations, so the Asia Pacific region. I'm doing some amazing work in Mauritius at the moment. I'm sort of their external assessor at the University of Mauritius. What a privilege that has been. And so it's
mm,
that sort of transformative, transcendent work that I think you've contributed to so beautifully, that when people don't think they have a space in the university, because indeed university history is an elitist history, most
mm,
of us do not have a place or a position in the policies and the procedures that are constructed in contemporary higher education. We don't have a place.
mm,
And
mm,
what our article has done, I hope, is it has created that place, created that space. To summon the old death doula mantra, we have constructed the space and then we are holding the space, holding the door
mm,
for other people to follow us and feel centered and cared for and feel seen. I think part of what I was hoping for you through this process is that you would
mm,
feel seen and heard and cared for, and you would have this deep leadership role for the students that would follow you and would respect your journey because you have created space for others. And that's not a bad impact from an article.
mm. Yes, the immeasurable. Yeah.
You're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. And so, look, I'm
Mm,
so grateful to have spent this time with you and written this article with you. And as I said, it was great for me because it gave me a space to experiment in a way. So, for supervisors that may be watching this, the first half of the article is me very much experimenting on Matthew, experimenting with different ways of organising professional development, career arcs, career narratives, deterritorialised modelling for the
mm,
best practice so that our students in regional universities get the best experience that is available to us now with contemporary
mm,
educational technology. And then Matthew really demonstrated how those models can be taken on the road and can enable a different type of future for us all. So Matthew, thank you for writing with me and
oh,
thank you for this
thank you.
conversation. And it will be the start, I'm sure, of many,
Mm,
many more. And what a gift you've been to me in 2025. I mean, I think about, I didn't know you a year ago. How amazing is that? And look at this incredible journey we've shared with this article, this little tiny article that suddenly thousands of people are reading and downloading
mm,
in a couple of weeks before Christmas. I've never seen anything like it really, and that's about you.
mm. Oh, well, I'm not sure. I think it's it's a lot about you too. And yes, I'm very grateful to you as well. And I think I didn't know you personally, but I knew your voice and your writing. And so, never meet, never meet your inspirations. Apparently, no, it's nonsense. I think, pluck the courage, say good day. Yeah, see what emerges. And I it's been a wonderful opportunity to really, I suppose, in my own mind, solidify. You've often asked the why question, why are you doing a PhD, as a
Yeah,
kind of reflective tool. And I suppose I've never really had an answer to that question, other than this kind of innate sense of why not,
yeah.
why not? And I think, if nothing else, the PhD is because I bloody well can, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna finish it and
And
it's
that
all gonna happen.
Yeah,
you
and that
know?
caring infrastructure is absolutely everything, and that's what our universities are for. So, Matthew, you're going to have a
Mm,
tremendous 2026. Don't know what's going to happen. It's going to
mm.
be terribly
Well,
exciting.
it's the
But
year of the horse, I'm told. So,
it's the year of the horse. So
so
you will
we
be on the
gallop
horse because
in,
I
yeah.
ain't getting on no horse. You'll be on that horse and I'll be walking alongside the horse. But can I say it's going to be a great year for you? And the great joy for me is I met you when I was 56 years of age. The great joy is for the rest of the days that I'm around, we get to walk through together, and and that's such
Mm.
a blessing to me. So thank you for everything
Oh,
that you are and
yes.
everything you've done, mate, and every future success.
Oh, same, and thank you, Tara. You're incredible. Thank you.